Namaste and welcome to the Healing Mirror podcast. My name is Soraya Saraswati, and here I'm offering discussions, global satsangs and interviews with spiritual teachers, philanthropists and awakened and inspirational humans. Being comfortable in your seat. If you've had to rush to arrive at satsang, just take a couple of deep breaths. Let go of your morning or your day and arrive into presence. Being fully aware of the one space that contains everything. That sense of being or aliveness, or the expanded space of consciousness, where nothing is excluded. It contains the body, all objects, but it becomes the solitary or the one subject. That alive presence or sense of being, where we all melt as one. Where the sense of separation no longer exists, where all borders melt, that one field of being that contains everything. And then coming back to a sense of individuation, of consciousness as a body, feeling the breath in the nostrils, feeling the physicality within the world of duality, and taking some deep breaths. And whenever you feel ready, just opening your eyes. But in Satsang, we maintain this sense of connection. There is no doubt that we live in the world of duality and that there is apparent separation, and that's expressing through the multiplicity of all the apparent objects. Yet there is, as we've just experienced, this field of consciousness, this field of aliveness, this sense of being, which is the one thing going on, and it permeates all forms of separation. It is the ground of being, as it's referred to in Advaita and non-duality. And we could come back to the Upanishads from yoga. Tat Tvam Asi, I am that. I am that. Referring to the I am, that is that field of presence, that field of awareness, where we meet as the one experience. Yet we are asked, as we know, by birth into this duality, this apparent duality, as a body with a mind, to live and have a thorough, full and joyful experience of this world, this apparent paradise on earth. And of course, whether it's experienced as a paradise on earth or hell on earth depends on the patterns that are being played out through the mind, which is the gift that is given to humanity, the mind that through the perception of the senses, we perceive through the senses, which are interpreted by the brain, and then there is the concept of the mind, and thought is occurring, and depending on what patterns and impressions, beliefs, perhaps religion, we claim different thoughts, and then we call them our own. And our work here is to see through the patterning that has occurred here through our life, perhaps prior to this physicality and this birth, but particularly in this birth as, as a Soraya, as a Colette, as a Sebastian, and what is occurring here. And then it is that we can live as awakeness. I think it's important, though, that we understand this will herald an end of suffering, but it may not herald an end of pain, because we still have a physical body which can experience pain. We still have, while we're in this body, there will be certain preferences. There will be, until we're in a very, very high place, certain attachments to people. to your partner, perhaps, to your children, perhaps. And because of that, there can be the pain of loss. Yet at the same time, because of the deep acceptance of the unfolding and the understanding that there is a higher order here, that there is a divine unfolding, allowing us to evolve back to that place of oneness, that place of emptiness, so that we can then be filled with life force, filled with love, filled with light. And there is still an experience here of being human. And the wonderful thing is to understand the great okayness, that all of that is okay. We're not making anything wrong here. In fact, it's our judgmental mind. It's that mind that comes in and judges things as black or white or right or wrong with those definitions. That is the very source of suffering. So I just thought I'd start with that tonight, and then perhaps someone has a sharing, or you may have had an epiphany or a deep understanding, or something that's perhaps become a little clearer for you since we saw each other last, and you may like to share that with our beautiful Satsang group, or you may have a question. So I'll just pass over, and it's just a small group tonight, so just unmute yourself if you'd like to speak and go right ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I really love that introduction, especially where you reminded us that we are still in this body, so you're going to experience bodily experiences, physical, and we still have the mind, I guess, that goes with the body, which you touched on, and we're going to have those experiences of the mind as well. So I guess, does that mean all the confusion we have, doubts, relations, and all that is part of it? So how do we kind of stay in the oneness during those periods?
Good question, Ish. The mind will always do what the mind does. And thoughts will be streaming through. It's which thoughts we choose to energize. Because as soon as we give something our attention, we give it our energy. We energize that. We actually bring it to life, don't we? So, for instance, there can be doubtful thoughts going through, and you can just simply see those as part of the human experience, that, you know, the mind does doubt sometimes. But if we decide to focus on those thoughts that may be doubtful thoughts, then we give them life. So it's a matter of discernment and wisdom, and understanding that we are not thought. Yet thought can create, it can be a powerful energy, can't it? You know, thought can literally drive us crazy if we jump on that mind train and we keep going around the tracks, you know, jumping from thought to thought, carriage to carriage. And if we step off the mind train onto the neutral platform and remind ourselves that as consciousness. We can be the seer of all of that. But it's only when we become identified with thoughts that they actually become a problem. Because a thought is what is a thought? Is it a thing? No. It's just an energy taking the form of thought, usually from some past pattern, fear, experience that's left a trace there. And then that thought is flowing through, and because of the patterns that are here, perhaps old fears or experiences, that thought will stand out. Now, if we just let that thought go by, which is ultimately will just happen naturally, the more we understand and shift our identity from the body-mind to the field of aliveness, alive being, conscious. I mean, there's so many words, and words fail as well. Then we know we are not those thoughts, and they lose their power. They lose their power over us. It's like the bubbles, coming up. They just pop and become nothing. But initially when we begin to see through our patterns, we can actually go through the hell realms. When our patterns are coming up thick and fast and they're getting poked. Remember I said, poke a lemon, what do you get? Lemon juice. Well, if we poke an area of our life which provokes fear, what are we going to get? We're going to get the juice of fear. We're going to get the juice of whatever is there. So if an old pattern is being poked initially until it's cleared, that's the juice that's going to come out. And sometimes when patterns are deeply entrenched and there's a lot of fear around them, and perhaps, history that we haven't been able to disidentify from yet, we can go through the hell realms because we don't, at that point, have the ability to step off, to let go, to just let it pass through. We don't have the ability to be aware of being aware of that happening. Does that help, Ish? And do you have an example that you can perhaps share, Ish?
Yes, it's quite, that was very revealing actually. That's quite helpful, very helpful in fact. It's like you're holding on to whatever that's causing you anxiety, pains, or the stress in your mind, and you haven't got the ability to let go, or you haven't become the seer, you're becoming the experiencer rather than the seer. That's the sort of gist I'm getting from your explanation, which is making one of the things that came to light is things going on in our neighborhood here. We have 6 houses connected, and we have a right of way, a path in the back garden, so we can access our homes from back. And one of the neighbors is growing brambles on the path for berries, and it's making it impossible for us to get through. And so it's become an issue. And I wake up sometimes thinking about how I just want to go and chop it all down, throw it in a garden. Then I come back to the point of being that it's all okay. So we're all one, and it's like, it's fine. And I'm going to find space, and I come in and out of it. And that's why I thought this morning it's really interesting how you get caught, or some hooks come onto you and you can't let go.
Just like brambles.
Just like brambles, yeah. It's interesting. So yeah, it's nice to be able to watch it. Then it becomes no issues, there's no stress, and you love the person. And when you go into the wagon of it being antagonistic to you and you holding on to, oh, why don't they shift it? Then you, that love still should be there completely, you know. So it's very interesting to observe that from what you're saying, and that has helped. Thank you.
Very interesting, isn't it, that it's brambles?
Yeah.
Because they can be, you know, they can have little claws that grab you, can't they?
That's right. Speaking of the brambles.
Oh, so what a wonderful lesson for you. What a perfect symbol. And, you know, the other thing is sometimes we have to acknowledge, I'm really not feeling any love for this person at the moment. It's just not there, you know. but that one, you know, I could really embrace that, because thank you, brambles, you are teaching me. These brambles have become the master for you. They are really there for you. Perhaps they're just there for you, perhaps they're there for others as well, I'm sure, but to be your teacher. And I just love that, where something like this will come up and it's just the perfect teacher. Yeah. And this is sort of happening on the planet at the moment too. And I've contemplated on this because there's a lot of fear being propagated by the media, by politicians, and I never buy into fear. I refuse to be afraid of this COVID. And it's a difficult thing because there are lots of conspiracy theories going around, and fear mongering from so many different corners, and some of them are quite surprising. Yet I do feel that the leadership, although in certain areas very well-meaning, it is propagating fear for people. And, you know, of course, there can be a personal opinion. But as well as that personal opinion, it's a wonderful thing to be able to just be watching the whole unfolding of this, because it's quite fascinating and it's quite in depth. And whenever we put pressure either on anyone or any situation, again, it's like poking the lemon. We see what sort of juice comes out, and that there's a lot of fearful juice coming out of humanity at the moment. But there's also a lot of people standing up and saying, you know, I'm not going to wear a mask. I don't want to be afraid. You know, I'm not afraid of this virus. And then there's scientists, you know, talking about herd immunity, and that we've had viruses around since the first virus. I think we all evolved from like a virus anyway. So it's interesting to watch the whole unfolding, but it's interesting to watch the mind being perhaps drawn here or drawn there a little more than over there, perhaps. So for me at this point, remaining as awake as I can be, as loving as can be through this, as present as can be through this, feels, you know, there's once you're living as awakeness, as aliveness, as, you know, as much as can be at any given time, depending on what's playing out, then that, bringing that state of consciousness to the table is something in itself. So one might say we're doing nothing, but we're doing everything as nothing. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just what you said about the fear. I find it fascinating that here in this country we're being asked to wear face masks in supermarkets and certain public places, and there's a really interesting a movement against that. But the movement they're not saying, I refuse to be frightened. They're saying, I will not be controlled. And I find that a really interesting perspective, because actually, the scientists tell us, and I don't know, I have no idea whether it's true or not, but the scientists tell us that we wear face masks to stop other people, if we're carriers, to stop other people getting so it's an act of service to humanity, if you like. But there's this really interesting, so the face mask really is just it's just the teacher. It's not really about face masks at all. It's about how we are responding and what we're identifying into. And I think there is actually, what it's surfacing is a fear of being controlled, of being told what to do. And yet, for me, whether I wear a face mask or not, it's I think people say you're going to get ill, you're going to get this, that, and the other. And I think, well, surgeons and nurses wear face masks in operating theatres sometimes for 12 hours at a stretch, and they don't seem to fall particularly ill. So from that perspective, I'm not frightened about my health wearing a face mask, but it's like there's something about just accepting the unknown, because none of us actually really know, and being comfortable and okay with that. It seems to me that the lesson that I'm taking from it.
I liked particularly what you said there, Sarah, about people aren't seeing their being against wearing face masks as a fear, but it is a fear. It's a fear of being controlled. So it's still fear, and it always comes back to me as, do I choose fear or do I choose love? Now, that's not necessarily going to answer that question about face masks, but I don't choose fear. And even the fear of being controlled is one of our deepest fears, actually, of losing control. But the thing we could take that right back to from a non-dual point of view is who loses control? Who is here to lose control? And of course, that's the separate body mind. That's the identification of myself as a separate person. And this is actually the greatest fear and the deepest hurdle that we face in truly awakening to a non-dual experience of one love, one consciousness. Is there is absolutely no appeal in waking up once we understand that there's nothing in it for the ego. There's nothing in it for the separate self. And when you look at how our society is, projecting individuation these days. It's all about personal development. And usually that personal development is me as an even stronger, separate, better self. It's not personal development as in releasing that need to be to melt into a place of love and openness and receptivity to all it is. It's a lot of the personal development, and the entrepreneurship is a huge thing now, but it's all about setting yourself up as a separate identity, often to earn more money, which is interesting. And so spirituality is a term that's been bandied around a lot, but when you get to the crux of it, that I am that, Tat Tvam Asi, be still and know that I am that I am. So hum. This is so deep, so profound, that we can still experience the magnificence of the body and the ability of the brain to cognize and the senses to experience this amazing great mystery. But at the same time, if there's an attachment to the separate self that knows, the separate self that is in control, the separate self that is running the show, there's a split, and this is the split in humanity. And that with that split, there can never be peace. There will always be these two sides at war. And that's what we're seeing play out here in the realm of humanity, is war, isn't it? This warring aspect, until the melting away of the ego separate self that feels it's in control and it's the one. And it's so subtle, because we still will have separate bodies. Look at all the beautiful bodies in this room. You know, we still will have separate personalities. There'll still be separate gifts. You know, what have we got here? We've got composers, we've got teachers, we've got intellectuals, we've got carers, we've got, you know, techie people. There's still all of that individuation in the world of duality. Yet, can we appreciate that it's just beyond our mind to try and conceptualize it, isn't it? So we have this incredible multiplicity and expression of all that is, all the beautiful, wonderful differences, yet all happening within the one field, the one love, the one consciousness, the oneness, that you know, to be able to comprehend this, it actually blows my mind out of the water. So yes, Sarah, it's, yeah. To lose control. We were never in control anyway. That's a cosmic joke. We think we're a separate body mind in control of our lives, pushing the buttons. I mean, really? Yeah, amazing. And so much suffering comes from that. You know, when I was working as a naturopath, one of the Bach flowers was for the fear of the unknown. I used to work with flower essences, and the fear of the unknown came up for, you know, I think it comes up in every human mind actually. But when it's completely out of control, of course, then there's a lot of mental health issues. So it's a very, very real thing. Mm. I've just clicked unmute, and then you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you've been saying resonates very strongly. And certainly, when you were talking before about the train of thoughts going around and around, I mean, I found myself this week getting very caught up in precisely that. But actually, at a time when I was sort of like half asleep. So even though I was aware of it, I didn't want to be captured by that train. And I was actually, when I then awoke, I was really quite upset that I had been captured by a patterning of thinking, which I felt was getting me nowhere and was historical. So I think everything that you said has landed very, very well with me today. So thank you.
And then, of course, the interesting thing is that when that occurs, and I'm not sure if this occurred for you, Sebastian, is we suddenly realize that we're on, you know, we're on the mind train. We are looping in an old loop that we really don't want to be there. So then when we comprehend that completely and we get it, we jump off the mind train, but then we start self-flagellating, don't we, and beating ourselves up. Why did I get there again? So that may have happened for you too. Oh, you have to push unmute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was really quite distressed that I was being captured by stuff that I thought that was fairly irrelevant, but that was actually triggering stuff. So yeah. So it's just being aware of how little I felt in control of my ability to actually separate off from the thoughts that I know, but through noticing them, that are not productive and are, yeah.
The fact that you brought awareness into that and saw through them, that in itself is fantastic. You know, once we start to do that, we know we're disempowering those, and they'll probably come back again at some stage, and they'll come back until they don't, because they need to be completely seen through. And sometimes we see through part of a theme, but we don't see through all of that theme. And once that theme is completely seen through, it's absolutely, and you know, good thing to do, I find. I laugh at it sometimes. And sometimes the more tragic it is, the more we can laugh, because we realize, oh my gosh, you know, like, wow, I've just made that into like a complete tragedy, like a Shakespearean experience. And it was just a thought, igniting old areas which obviously needed igniting again so that the next layer could be seen through. So there's actually a great process happening there. It can be painful though. It can be difficult, and it can, you know, it can not just be painful for us, but it can be painful for our partners, our friends, and our family as well, because often it's the people you love the most that will be poking us and allowing some of that to come up. So you know, you may or may not have experienced that, but very, very often. And this is the beautiful thing that can happen in conscious relationship as well. You know, if we can talk about these things together, if we can laugh about these things together, maybe not at the time when they've been poked and they're a little raw, but later, to just really shine that light of awareness on things such as these together is just such a gift. If you have a good friend or a family member or a partner, you know, Terry and I have worked in that way beautifully over the years. Initially, when a lot of things are coming up and those things are still have spark to them, you have to wait till they've passed to be able to, you know, work with that and share that. But being able to laugh about these things is wonderful. You know, Terry and I used to have this little joke that I was Cleopatra and he was Antonio. And Antonio is, well, Terry's the Leo, so you can imagine Antonio, you know. And I was Cleopatra, who was, you know, in control and very efficient and got things done. And we would play on our personality traits. And we would just go, Antonio's showing up today, or Terry would say to me, a little bit of Cleo coming through there. And we would laugh about it. You know, it's really great if we can actually make light, because, you know, these are thoughts. They're absolutely nothing. They're just a thought, but yet can be so powerful if we give them our power, or give them power, if we allow them energy. And that energy is in the form of awareness, recognition, and acknowledgement as being true. But if we can just give them awareness without any form of truth and see them for what they are, no thing, nothing, then they fade away. And I've always found that humour is a wonderful thing. You know, sometimes I'm walking along, something will pass through and I'll just laugh out loud. And I might seem like a mad woman, but I'm just laughing at the mind and what the mind can come up with sometimes. It's just quite bizarre. You know, we have such wonderfully incredible imaginations, don't we? We're very good at making, what is it, mountains out of molehills. I had very good teachers with this, with my parents. They would fight all day, every day. They absolutely adored each other, and they were together for, you know, 57 years till my mother died. And but they would argue about everything. And it was like they were playing out the mind train, but they were playing it out in a pantomime in their relationship. It was fascinating. I remember as a young child being very, very conscious of that. And yeah, interesting. But it's going on everywhere. Now, thanks, Sebastian. That's a great sharing there. Very good, and very amazing that you could actually end up stepping off the mind train, seeing it for what it was and letting it go. And that's where consciousness is coming through clearly. Thank you. I'm thinking Terry probably has some little gems for us. Ter?
Hi, everyone. You know, the old school traditional Zen master had a very difficult job because he had the unenviable task of having to lure his students towards what was certain death to the to the ego, because only when that sense of separation starts to dissolve can you really enter into the world of Zen, which is the world of now, the place where everything becomes spontaneous. And the human body is necessarily a limited view of reality. Consciousness kind of intentionally limits itself by entering into this view. And in a sense, it loses its infinity. It loses its contact with infinity, which is out of time, out of separation, basically. So if we can somehow question the actual solidity of everything, it becomes much more malleable. You know, a friend of ours in India, he told me this. I may have mentioned this before. We are in a deep hypnotic trance in a holographic universe. And this is a hologram. There is no substance to any of this. It's a dream. Now, if we can take that on board in whatever way we can, without trying to explain it, then possibilities actually open up that could never happen with such a solid world of subjects and objects. So if we can somehow disappear that view and disappear as an object in a world of other objects, that opens up the possibility of being a solitary subject, which is what consciousness is. And consciousness in a human body, as Terry, or as whatever this view is, only has to wake up to one dream. Now, cosmic consciousness, which is not limited by a human body, is dreaming 8.7 billion dreams at once. Now, that's a pretty tall order. You can't really even begin to relate to that. So here we are in this human body. We have this wonderful dream. We have this wonderful experience that's opening up here all the time. And so let's enjoy it. It's not something that we can ever explain. We're here. Let's just enjoy it. You know, awakening is the ending of the identification with the thought self, the illusory character that's created by thought. So, and thought is not the enemy. Thought is the savior of everything, because thought takes care of us. Thought is the background process that looks after everything. It creates the universe, the world of form. And so the Zen master has to dangle a carrot. He has to dangle a carrot because the ego would never want to self-destruct. So that carrot is all those wonderful things that we're going to get, which is bliss, euphoria, ending of suffering, anything you can think of that is nice. But I can tell you that awakening is a calamity, total calamity to the ego. It's a complete disaster. It cannot be anything else, because it's the annihilation of that sense of separation. But as a carrot, we have this, we're drawn into this world of love and bliss, but actually with those years of letting go in the awakening process, years of it can be, and that's not much of a carrot, really. Sorry. Just I haven't got much to offer, I'm afraid, in terms except the cosmic joke of it all, that's all. Namaste.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you. It's true, though. When I look back at the journey that's been had here, I remember glimpses of absolute clarity and awakeness occurred as a child. I still remember those moments that were experienced through this body as a younger body, of absolute nothing and everything, and perfection. And then the journey of life occurred, and all sorts of happenings and dramas and disasters, and this was almost like going down into the depths and then coming back up and having an experience of awakeness again, and going back down into the depths of despair and grief and loss, and coming back up and having an experience of awakeness again, until those got less and less and less. And it can be and is the most profound and most important commitment we can have. But it can only happen when it happens, and there's no control over how that happens, when that happens, or even why. Yet once we've had a taste of absolute awakeness, of clarity, of being filled up to a point where what's being filled up is just everything, not anything separate, then nothing else is quite so delicious, quite so loving, so peaceful, so empty yet so full, and so clear. And when that clarity is absolutely shining there, here, wherever, we can't imagine ever falling back onto that mind train again. Yet having a human experience and being asked to live through these vehicles, it very likely could happen again. And we just have to laugh at that, but be ready to die. Be ready to be nothing. Know that the separate individual self that we've built had a lifetime of building is not sustainable in awakeness. Awakeness is isness. It has nothing to do with the separate self. As soon as the separate self comes in to claim it, it's like the elusive thing that you can never hold, you can never grasp. The separate self, the mind, can never grasp it. It's beyond. But it's always here and it's ever available. This is the great mystery. And it's beautiful to share with you beautiful, lovely, apparent friends. So we'll see you next week. Namaste. Be kind and loving. Every time we fall in the doo-doo, we learn something new. Namaste.
Join me for upcoming podcasts. And please, if you found this helpful or you'd like to share a comment or perhaps your own experience, I'd love for you to leave that message down below this podcast. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I'm sure we can all help each other to hold hands, to remain awake, present, clear, and loving. Namaste.